Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Solid World. It is the July Solid World, as opposed to June Solid World, losing my months, as opposed to February that's shown at the top of the slide. It'd be great to know where everyone's calling in from. I'm Jesse. I'll be your host this month. I'm the Solid lead at the ODI, and I'm calling in from the ODI offices here in London. We'll be starting the presentation very shortly. The webinar will be recorded and we'll be sharing it on Vimeo and on social media so that anyone can access it and see what we're talking about. We will be having a Q&A at the end of the introductions and at the end of the main presentations. So if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. And I hope you enjoy this month's Solid World. The order for today is that we're going to go through some updates. We're first going to hear about updates on the ODI side. We're going to hear from Louise Burke, our CEO, around operational updates, and I'll come in with a few updates as well. Then we're going to hear from Elf Pavlik on this community group, Jeff Zucker on the practitioners group, and Aaron Coburn on the LWS group. And then for today's main speakers, we've got a great set of technical talks. First, we'll be hearing from Jackson Morgan, who is over at SetMeld, and we'll be talking about linked data objects. And then we'll be hearing from Nico, who works on Nextgraph and has also been doing work around LDO. So with no further ado, I am going to hand over to Louise.
Thanks, Jesse. And I'm in another room at the ODI offices too. So here in London, I see lots of people putting lots of comments as to where they are in the world. So everybody's very welcome. So I'm done giving an update on all things stewardship that's been happening at the ODI and how we are looking to continue to support the solid work that we've got, and to talk a little bit about the advisory committee as well and where we've got with our recruitment process. And then Jesse is going to pick up the operations, the engagement, and the event side. So if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. So we are very, very close. We're not quite there yet, but we are very, very close to closing a $3 million deal with Google.org. Google.org is a philanthropic arm of Google. It operates as a not-for-profit and completely independent of the core organization. We are in the sixth scientific work stream, or scientific progress work stream. There is 3, so that's the one that we've been assigned to. And I had a very, very good conversation with the woman who runs that work stream last week at a Google.org event that myself and Jesse attended. So what is the funding for? The funding would be to support Solid, looking to support its core. And the sort of things that we will need to do is to basically build out, if we go to the next slide, is to build out the staff, the technical staff that we need to support Solid. So that will include some engineering staff, probably about sort of 2.5 engineers to support it, and then a community manager, because at the moment, I think the community needs a lot of support, and also to pull together all the various use cases and different initiatives that people are working on. So as soon as we've completely closed the paperwork and everything, we will then get cracking on recruitment. It's also there to provide stimulus funding for certain applications for Solid. Now, I don't have the answers right now as to how we design and decide the allocation of the funding against those applications, but there will be a criteria, there will be a process, and again, like all things we do, we will share them openly with the community. But we do want to be able to support a lot of applications that's happening across Solid. It will also help to organize our events like tournaments. We're also exploring what some hackathons might look like. And then, of course, the policy and just the general sort of look and feel of Solid in the market, along with its communication materials as well. And then the baseline infrastructure costs, they're not massive, but of course, at the moment, ODI is covering those, but they would also be covered from this funding. So we're very excited This is 3 million of a 10 million ambition. So we are still looking to secure the other 7 million to be able to really power charge or boost charge, whatever the word is, our work on Solid going forward. So next slide, please. Okay, so myself and Jessie and Elf Pavlik and Jeff Ducker, who are all actually panelists today, have been working really hard to appoint people into the advisory committee, the advisory group, which is a sort of governance group to oversee the work of Solid. We had an amazing response. In the beginning, we thought, oh, it's a bit slow, the response. But then actually, when we sort of did more promotion and we extended the deadline, we had lots of really good and interesting people apply for the roles. It's never easy deciding one person from another. So for those people who may not have made it onto the committee, please do stay close to the organisation because we want to be able to, and I know that Jessie is curating some of the comms back, we want to make sure we include as many people in the work that we do, even if you have not made it to the advisory group. So the two positions, the certain positions that come with the roles that people have, and then there's a number of positions that have been appointed. So I'm not proposing to read through every one of these, and we probably could have done with putting names to faces. It's almost like match the name to the face. But on the right-hand side, you have some images of the people that's been appointed. I'm absolutely delighted to see that we've made some strides towards diversity in the group, because that was really important. So we had some strong female people apply for positions as well, and also some good global representation too. It's never perfect, but you know what? It's a step in the right direction. So I want to say, I guess, a public thank you to Elf Pavlik and to Jeff Zucker and to Jessie for all of the support that you gave us in working and finding the next advisory committee for Solid. And I'm very excited for moving forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Louise. So I'll take over to give a few more updates. On the governance side, in addition to the advisory committee that is going to be providing strategic direction on Solid, we've also stood up an operations advisory committee that will be more focused on day-to-day tasks around our infrastructure and guiding what we're doing with our infrastructure. So those members are Ray Zhao, Alan Bourgeois, and Theo Bowden. At the moment, some of the topics that we're talking about are what server infrastructure is the ODI going to continue to maintain, such as solidcommunity.net, and what new services and different Solid providers should we help make available to different organizations. And some future topics for discussion that haven't come up yet are listed below. I'm not going to go through them in the call, but if you do want to propose either roadmap items at a technical level for Solid and research topics that we should be focusing on as the ODI and using our infrastructure, please do go to these two links listed at the bottom, and I'll put them in the chat after this presentation, which is solid/roadmap and solid/research topics on GitHub. On the engagement side, we've started to do work to engage a number of communities around Solid. Many of these communities have already been engaged with Solid in different ways, through academic institutions, through collaborating with other organizations, collaborating with open source developers. But we as the ODI are now forming our networks with the data spaces community, with the digital credentials community, with DNS registrars, and with things like decentralized storage and networking software and other similar protocols, so that we have, firstly, awareness of related efforts, and so that over time we can start to support more collaboration between Solid and those efforts as we get people like the community manager to support us in that work. There's also a few upcoming events that people in this call may be interested in attending. The first is the Global Digital Collaboration, which will be in early July. We, ODI, are likely to attend that. There's also FediCon, which I saw advertised on one of the chat channels around Solid recently. There's a My Data conference in September, where we expect there to be a number of different talks given on Solid. And one of our advisory committee members, Vivi, is the CEO of My Data. And we're also in the process of starting to organize next year's Solid Symposium, which will be April to May 2026. There's no other updates from our side. So I'm going to now hand over to Aaron, switching up the order that was on the title slide to give some LWS updates.
Thank you, Jesse. And thank you also to the ODI for inviting us back. I'm Aaron Coburn. I am a co-chair of the W3C Linked Web Storage Working Group. I serve in that role with two others, including Eric Prudhomme and Lawrence DeBacker. And we've had this group for, it was formed back in the fall of last year. Much of the work that has happened in the first part of this year has focused on developing and formalizing a set of use cases and requirements into a document. I'm going to send a link to that document in its current form in a few moments, but there's some more work that needs to be done on that. But we have started with over 100 discrete use cases that we've been triaging, clarifying, and then combining in terms of finding those that overlap and those that may be out of scope, and then trying to distill that into a reasonable set of use cases that can become part of this eventual use cases and requirements document. More recently, though, we've started to transition into work on the core protocol, which is something that I think everyone in the broader Solid community has been very eagerly anticipating. We named two editors, Jesse Wright from the ODI, whom you've just been hearing from, along with Eric Bremer from Stony Brook University. These are two people who have an extensive background in Solid and Solid-related activities, as well as a lot of background in specifications, working groups, community groups, and just general involvement with lots of people, and being able in those different contexts to work together and bring people together. So we're really excited to be working with these two and to move the specification forward. As we move forward on that core protocol, there are quite a few areas. These are just a few that I've listed here that we're looking at right now. One of them has to do with data identifiers. So how do we indicate what is a resource, clarifying authentication as well as authorization. Some of the key parts of this involve identifying some of these abstractions that we use and then clarifying those abstractions for use both within this specification as well as thinking ahead so that other specifications that eventually build upon this can make use of it. We have meetings every Monday at 10 a.m. So we're generally speaking with working groups. We are tied to Boston, the Boston time zone. There's a link to the webpage here. This webpage lists out participants. It lists out the repositories that we are working on, and from those links to those repositories, anyone, whether you're part of this group or not part of this group, anyone is able to create issues, comment on issues, which may be issues related to the core protocol or issues related to use cases and requirements document. So we really invite people to be involved as much as we can, and especially as we move forward in looking at these principal areas of work, we're going to be trying to bring in as many experts in these individual areas as possible, because there's a lot of expertise across the entire community who aren't necessarily part of the working group per se, but these are people we hope can really help inform the decisions that we do make. So thank you again.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'm now going to hand over to Jeff Zucker to give the practitioners update. And I'll also ask you, Jeff, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon, where it's unseasonably warm. Hello, everyone. I'm one of the 3 co-chairs of the Solid Practitioners Group, along with Rahul Gupta and Mikhail. We are a hub for people putting Solid into practice in the real world. So that means that people who are creating applications, people are creating things for end users to use. Applications, pod providers, etc. We meet every the first and third Thursdays of every month. The details are in a link I'll share in a minute. Our meetings cover many topics. The main product that we've been working on is the catalog of Solid resources. And I put the link there, and I would, it's at a very preliminary stage. We're still prototyping it. We're revising it as we go along, but it does exist and it does have forums. So what would really help us out is if every single person who's in this room goes to that link, search around to find if you're already in there. If not, create a record. Because we really need to see who's in the community, and we need to make it available to the public about what's available within Solid and who's involved in it. So yourself, any projects you might be working on, even if they're only in an exploratory stage, any organizations you're working with that are related to Solid, please go and create a record. If a record already exists, please save it again so that we can see that you've updated your record. And any feedback, there's a link on the site to where you can provide feedback, and please let us know. Now, in addition to the catalog, at each meeting we have a variety of topics we cover. One of the main ones is we want people to show off their work. And this is both so that we can know what's going on and so that we can develop collaboration, that different projects working on similar things can find out about each other and share their work. So within the past couple of months, we've had presentations on activity pods, on Mandat, which is a whole framework for business-to-business communications. The PASS project, which is putting Solid to use in the houseless community and people facing housing insecurity. We heard from a Swiss group working on a Solid emissions monitoring for climate change. So a variety of apps, and we try to focus as much as we can on socially relevant apps and apps that are having an impact in the communities. Although all apps and providers are encouraged to present. We also have a number of meetings on what we call verticals. So we've had meetings on transportation, on delivering social services, on healthcare. And in each case, we try to get people that are working on projects in those areas to come in and talk about them, and also domain experts who are not necessarily involved in Solid, but can let us know what it is in each of those domains that we need to be paying attention to. So we try to get that, the combination of the social impact and community involvement. We also have meetings on technical topics such as search, indexing, shapes, and many others. One of our main goals is to foster the adoption of Solid, since each of us is working on a particular project in a community, we're all facing that same issue. So we try to share how do you get government agencies involved, how do you spread the word about Solid. We're also, as an official part of the ODI Advisory Board, we're going to be contributing to the General Solid roadmap. We have a number of resources available, a chat room, a mailing list, a video repository, and the online meetings that I've already mentioned. And information on all of those things is available at the link there on the GitHub for the Solid practitioners. And
Wonderful.
that about does it for me.
Lots going on. Thank you so much, Jeff. And last but not least, I am going to hand over to Elf Pavlik. Where are you calling in from, and what are the CG updates?
Thank you, Jesse. So I'm currently living in Mexico. I'm originally from Europe. I will be very brief, keeping in mind that there are two amazing presentations ahead of us. So please feel free to take a screenshot, or if you're watching a recording, pause to read the text. So community group at this moment is focused, especially the chairs, on reforming how we work. So rearranging the workflow in the community group. We had some unnecessary tensions, and many of them are with good intentions, because people try to have good quality of standards. But we need to recognize that community group, it's not meant to create standards. It creates reports. It's a home for incubation of work, and later working groups can take that work as inputs, as happens with a link web storage working group that Aaron presented, and that's where the standards are happening. So community group is for incubation, and actually we do want to embrace that. We want to explore different possibilities, different solutions to the problems we try to solve. And I think maybe because we didn't have that in mind, we were sometimes tending to create unnecessary tensions. So this information also will be worked on via pull request in one of the GitHub repositories. So if you follow the link to the Solid CG group page, you will find links to some of the repos, or ask on chat, mailing list, feel free to join. And that's one of our main focuses. So again, I will not go through all the text for the sake of brevity, but we are focusing on creating environment that everyone can feel comfortable exploring possible solutions to the common problems we try to describe. And next slide, please, Jesse. And while we have those kind of principles more clear already, when it comes for a framework and workflow, we are still working on that. I have here very rough kind of bullet points, or we're taking inspiration from TC39 group. We're taking inspiration from what FedID community group and working group are doing, our previous workflow in a Solid CG. But the idea is to have a little low barrier of entry that people can bring their ideas to the group, get feedback, start working on them. And then as there's more interest, there's more collaboration, we can start making a little more of requirements, a little more evaluations. But we want to focus on use cases, working on a pool of common use cases. As we can see in a working group, it takes a lot of time to get good quality use cases and requirements. And that's something that a community group can already have ready, to the point that working group can move much faster, having that well organized and prepared. And also, when we have diverse proposals, we can evaluate them in a kind of side-by-side comparison and say which proposals address which requirements. And then as we create reports, as we prepare something that the working groups can work off when they start their official recommendation tracks, we can provide those evaluations of different recourse. Also, coming back to the catalog that Jeff was presenting, we also want to take advantage of that to track implementations, track adoptions, deployments. Also, some implementations, since everything in the community group, it's not official standard, can have willful violations, say, I will not implement that because I don't agree with this choice. And tracking all that can help inform working group and help it move it much faster. And again, when I say working group, it's not only with link web storage. We're also talking about creating another working group to address more this data interop domains, this client-client interop. So yeah, we are currently focusing on creating better friendly work environment when different ideas can be explored. And again, coordinating with other community groups that already exist, sometimes create one if we need to create a dedicated one, and then making sure that whatever we have created as a report is a good foundation for the working group to accelerate its work. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elf Pavlik. And now we're going to move over to the main presentations of the day. So I'm going to hand over to Jackson Morgan, who is over at SetMeld, which is the company that he works for, the developer of linked data objects, which is a client tool used within the Solid ecosystem. And Jackson has extensive experience with Solid and has developed with Solid in many capacities over a number of years. So I'll stop my screen sharing and let you share your screen. And can you tell us where you're calling in from and make a start?
Fantastic. I am calling in from the only city in the world that had a fun time watching the Super Bowl this year, Philadelphia. Woo! So good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon to everyone in this presentation. I will be presenting some of the new stuff for linked data objects, which is the Solid library that I've been developing. We got a lot to get into. I hope you guys like looking at code. So let's get into it. So who am I? I'm Jackson Morgan. You can contact me by going to o.team. There's a little contact form on there. If you like this stuff that I'm developing and you've got stuff that you want to develop, maybe there's something we can do together. But let's get into a bit of a refresher. For those of you who are not familiar with LDO, linked data objects, what is LDO? Well, the main goal of LDO is to take some of the complexity of RDF and make it easy for people who are used to JavaScript to use it. So on the right, you see here one of the ways that you might be manipulating triples in RDF. And then on the left is the exact same thing done with LDO. Very simple. Person.age is 23, person.name, you add John, and that's a new name on them. So this all works based on a schema system. So first, you write a schema. This is in Shex, but we are going to have Shackle support in the future. And then that schema gets turned into TypeScript typings and a context. We can then use that to write the code that we want to write. Once we parse the RDF, which is very easy to do just with a parse RDF function, that'll give us an LDO data set. And this is an RDF.js data set that contains everything that you want to have. But we don't want to be using the RDF.js data set to manipulate everything because we want it to feel like it's regular JavaScript. That's where creating a linked data object comes in. You can use the type that was generated based on the schema right here. Provide some language preferences if you want, that's optional. And then you say, this is the subject, the URL of the subject I want, and that gives you an object that you can modify like it's regular JavaScript. So for example, you can say like taggart.name, this is the equivalent to console logging this match function from RDF.js. Or you can set name to something, and that's the equivalent of doing deletes and adds in RDF.js. So this is just an example of how LDO makes it very easy to modify data and to read data. A bit of an announcement that I have is that there is a new way to handle arrays in LDO. And if you are familiar with an older version of LDO, arrays or like groups of things were handled by arrays. Now we are using sets. This uses the same semantics for JavaScript set semantics, and sets just applied more to RDF because sets are unordered lists, whereas arrays are ordered lists. So doing things like supporting sort was a little bit weird in LDO before, because if you have an unordered list, then you can't really support sort. But with an ordered list, with an unordered list, it's more in parity with what RDF works with. So As a review for this section, you can remember that LDO lets you manipulate RDF like it's regular JavaScript. We start with a schema, and then we can run a build command to generate TypeScript typings and context from it. And then everything you do is reading and writing to that underlying LDO data set. Let's talk about the new stuff now. We've got a new library, and I say new as in like within the last year or two, which is LDO Connected Solid. It's pretty easy to use. What you do is, in addition to handling triples for the LDO dataset, a solid LDO dataset can handle resources. So getting a resource is easy. You just call get resource on that data set. And then once you have it, there's a ton of methods that you can use. So in this example, we got the resource for example.com/resource1, and then you can just say .read, and that will do the solid process of fetching that resource. Now, there's a interesting decision that was made here that none of these methods throw errors. They all return errors. And that's because the way that errors are implemented in JavaScript are not very well explainable. So now when you get a return error, this has all the proper TypeScript typings to tell you what that error might be. So these an error for the read method might include a server error, an unauthenticated error, an unauthorized error, a non-compliant pod error, an unexpected resource error, or an unexpected HTTP error. And you can handle that whatever way you want. There are a ton of different methods. A few more of them are like create and overwrite. This creates a new resource. You can start a transaction and then use LDO the same way that you would regularly use LDO, like saying profile.name is John Doe, and then you can commit that transaction to remote. And there's just a ton of methods that I don't have time to go into. But one of the main concepts that can have your head wrapped around for this is that if we have two resources where it references the same subject, so for example, this resource here has profile me, and this resource here also has profile me. These are referencing the same subject, but they span multiple different resources. Well, LDO will take all of the information fetched from those resources and put it in the same data set. So as you're traversing the graph, it doesn't matter what resource it came from. You'll still be able to traverse it. A few other things that exist here. You can manage containers like parents and child containers. You can subscribe to notifications on those resources to get updates when they're updated. You can see the resource status, like is this resource currently loading or has it been fetched? And then you can also batch requests so that you're not making the same request over and over again. So section review for this one. Remember that a solid LDO data set keeps track of both triples and the resources that contain them. You can use resource methods like read and create and overwrite to manipulate resources. Remember that errors are returned, not thrown. And once a resource is loaded, its triples are mixed in with triples from other resources. Let's talk about the LDO connected library. This is how create solid LDO dataset actually works under the covers. We're creating something called a connected dataset, and then we're passing in a plugin called a solid connected plugin. Well, this isn't the only plugin that exists. You can have other plugins, and it's an array. And so you could actually support more than just solid. You could support other ecosystems. So that brings us to our next category, LDO connected NextGraph. LDO now supports NextGraph as well as Solid. You could actually build an application that can both run on NextGraph and on Solid with resources on both ecosystems. And the API is exactly the same. The only thing you need to do is provide a NextGraph. It's called a NURI or a NURI, as Nico will say, instead of a solid HTTP URL. So this section review, there's plugins, and NextGraph is one of them. And other plugins can be developed as well, as long as it's a resource and RDF-based ecosystem. Let's talk about React and solid React support. So in order to initialize React, you can use this create LDO React methods function, and then pass in the plugin that you want to use. And this gives you all the methods that you need to have in order to work with React. Or alternatively, you could just import it from @LDO solid React. But if you wanted to set it up with other plugins, then you can use the create LDO React method. Now, conceptually, those of you who are familiar with React recognize this chart. This is the data flow for React. A view goes to actions, goes to state. So in the LDO concept, a view is the React component. An action is the hooks that you've just exported, and then the state is the LDO data set that we referenced before. Let's see that in action. So this is the use resource method. You can say use resource, provide a URL to your resource, and then optionally, you can provide some settings like suppress initial read or reload on mount. By default, use resource will fetch that resource automatically and then keep you updated when that resource is properly loaded in. You can see the status of the resource by saying resource.isLoading and show a loading indicator. And then once that resource is there, you can use all the methods in order to manipulate it. For example, this resource that we fetched is some container. It's a container. So you can call the children method and then map on that and then show all of the URIs for those children. Another very important React hook is use subject. Use subject takes in a generated schema that we generated called a shape type, and then the URL for that subject. And that gives you a linked data object. And then you can render that linked data object by showing like, here's the name and here's all the friends of that subject. And the coolest thing about this is that when the subject is updated, when anything in the data set is updated, it's very smart and it'll figure out which components need to be re-rendered to show those updates. You don't need to think about when to update each component. So for this section review, LDO's React support follows the React state flow. Use resource is a React hook that fetches a resource that lets you keep track of its status, and hooks like use subject will give you the data from the data set and trigger a re-render if it's changed. Let's talk about link query. Let's say that you have a use case where there are multiple documents that link to each other. So in this document, I've got a person who knows this person, which links to this document here, which has other user. Now, let's say I want to conveniently fetch all of this information. Well, you can use a link query. A link query allows you to say, hey, this is the resource that we're starting with and the subject that we're starting with, and then this is the information that I want to know from it. I want to know the name of that resource, and then I also want to know the name of everyone that resource knows. What this will do, once you run the link query, is it'll go out and traverse those links until it has found all of the information in the query that you've defined. And just a little bit of a brag, this exists throughout the LDO project, but IntelliSense does work with this. So this is smart enough to understand the specific things that you have asked to fetch from this link query. Link query also works in React, and this also has the same re-render function. So you can define a link query and provide it in the use link query method. And that will bring you the profile, and then you can render the profile as needed. The section review, link query allows you to gather data from multiple documents through link traversal. The documents are defined by type-enforced link query object and support for both regular TypeScript and React. And one special other thing. Let's talk about the Svelte library. So you can initialize the Svelte library the same way that you initialize everything else with a create LDO Svelte methods. And then you can provide the plugin that you're using, whether that's Solid or Nextgraph, or maybe some future plugin that exists. And you'll recognize that these names are very similar. It's because Svelte has a parity for every hook and method that was created for React. So here's an example of what that looks like in Svelte. You can bring in the use resource and use subject methods. And then this, when you use this, this will create a store, a automatically updating store that when anything is updated in the LDO dataset, it will re-render your Svelte component in the Svelte kind of way. So the main thing to take away from this is that all React hooks also have a counterpart in Svelte. And then finally, let's talk about Linked Data Browser. This is a project that I've started recently to build a new kind of a data browser that's built on top of LDO. And I'll give you what that looks like so far. So I was here I'm trying to make the UI feel very clean and very functional. And this was actually really easy to build because of the methods that were already built into LDO. So the concept of this is that you have a URL up here that you can give to a document, and then that'll generate the kinds of views that make sense for this. So because I'm going to this example container, it is a type container, so I could see it as a container view, or I could see it as raw code. Everything can be seen as raw code. But yeah, you can click into this and see things and click into the profile and card. And card right now can only be seen as raw code, but this also has a plugin system where you can build new kinds of views for this. I haven't published this yet. There is a bug on the Inrupt auth library that needs to be fixed before it needs to be published. But this is just a glimpse at this project that is to come. So we went through a lot of stuff there. That's the conclusion. There's a ton of stuff. If you want to see the documentation for LDO, and I encourage you to use LDO in your current project, go to ldojs.org, and you can reach out to me by going to o.team. Thanks very much. I will throw it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jackson. That was a very, very insightful and detailed presentation in a very concise amount of time. So I'm sure a lot of us are still digesting. I am now going to hand over to Nico from NextGraph, who is going to tell us about all of the exciting things that he is working on, including how he is making use of LDO. So Nico, where are you calling in from? And I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Because we didn't do the check sound. Yes?
Loud and clear, yes.
Okay, great. I'm so happy to be here. And thanks to Elf Pavlik for helping me to join the session. So I'll share my screen first. Let's see. I never did that before. I don't know exactly how it works. I can choose a single window. Yes. And then I can choose my presentation. That's good. And you should see it by now.
Yes.
It works? Okay, great. So now I'll head to the presentation screen. That's it. So hello, everyone. I'm Nico, and today we are going to talk about linked data in the context of local first, peer-to-peer, and end-to-end encrypted apps with NextGraph. And NextGraph is inspired by the vision of Tim Berners-Lee from 2007 that has several names, right? We know it by the name Web3, Semantic Web, Giant Global Graph, Linked Data, Web of Data, you know. So it has been mostly known since 10 years by the name Solid. And I'm just coming back from the second edition of the Local First conference in Berlin. And what strikes me the most coming back from it is the motto of this growing local first movement. You own your data in spite of the cloud. And which is very similar to the one of Solid, right? That I found this true data ownership under users' control, but maybe there are other definitions, but you know what I mean. Solid is not local first yet, and local first solutions, all the ones I've seen in Berlin and all the ones I know, are not based on linked data. So NextGraph is here to reconcile those two worlds. I've been working on NextGraph since at least 3 years with the support of NLNet Foundation and NGI Fund of the European Commission. So what is NextGraph? Let's dive in a bit. At the bottom layer, it's a protocol for end-to-end encrypted sync of data. And on top of that, there is a framework or SDK for developing collaborative applications. And with that, we want to build a full ecosystem of apps on top of it. It's a work in progress and the protocol is ready, let's say. The framework is being finalized this year and we already have a preview available. You will ask me why another protocol, why another framework, like if there were not enough of them already, right? So if we, you might remember this, right? To install a software like this, that was offline only, I call it. You had no internet, or at best you would exchange files by email. And since 20 years, everything is in the cloud. And as you know, the cloud doesn't work offline. It's only working online. So I call it online only. And today we're talking about local first, which is it works online, but also offline. And when connectivity is restored, if you were offline, but you come back online, it synchronizes without conflict in the background. And as a bonus, you also get collaboration for free on every document. How can it merge without conflict? This is because we use CRDTs. So if you don't know about CRDTs, you can go to those two websites, crdt.tech and lofi.so. And basically, I will tell you, there are data types, meaning some special format to encode the updates of your document that helps you merge automatically all the concurrent edits afterwards. So it works. Believe me, it works. I'm sure you agree with me that users should own their data, right? To enforce this, we opted for the option to encrypt everything end-to-end. So we are sure nobody can see the data if it's not authorized. We believe that combining the sync protocol of CRDTs and end-to-end encryption will radically change how we make private and resilient software. Our protocol is designed to transport any kind of CRDT. So for now, we have the CRDT of AutoMerge, YGS, and RDF. And LoRo soon, we will add it. So what is this RDF CRDT? We developed it in-house because there wasn't any available when we started. And the others, the three others, are CRDTs that are very known in the world of local first. And what they do is basically all the same. You have documents in JSON, rich text, Markdown, and plain text. That's already cool. You can do a lot of things with that. And because you also have RDF in addition. And that's very similar to what you do in your pod. With your pod provider, you have you can store all kinds of documents. Some have RDF inside, some are just text, and some others are binary also. And we also do have binary files, which are immutable. You're never going to edit a binary file after you uploaded it. And we use content addressing that's to avoid duplicates. And then we also have a mechanism of blocks so that you can combine different types of documents, one inside another, like in Notion, for example, if you know it. Developers can choose which CRDT is the best fit for their data model. Sometimes you prefer to work with JSON, sometimes you prefer to work with RDF, or sometimes you need both. Our goal is to offer an integrated solution of malleable and composable software with interoperability based on linked data. An ecosystem of apps, or a platform, if you will, that can compete with the solutions of big tech. We are providing convenient APIs for app developers. So using reactive stores like React, Svelte, or Vue, soon we would like to add Vue. So you can bind your data to the GUI components, right? So you see where I'm going, knowing what just said before by Jackson. We already have a binding for TypeScript, Node.js, and Rust, because Nextgraph is coded in Rust and compiled to WASM. And we will add more bindings for other languages. We already have Python, by the way. So to use Nextgraph, you need to create first a data wallet, which manages all your data. It's available for mobile, desktop, and web. And it can also, that's where you also start and install other apps, third-party apps. You can search all your data locally, and it keeps it encrypted at rest, which is nice to have, especially if your device is stolen or something. So you can grant and revoke access of your data to other apps and share your documents in your social network. You can organize your data with public, protected, private stores, and also create new stores for groups or teams, let's say. It also connects, it also ventures into the social network world. We would like to be a more private and decentralized social network with an end-to-end encryption. That would basically put more emphasis on the so in Solid, right? It would be more social. Nextgraph can help with making social apps and also productivity tools like replacement for Office or webmail. That's what we are going to try to do in the coming months. Let's go a bit more technical. The main difference between the APIs that you know in Solid and our SDK in Nextgraph is that Nextgraph is local first, so you only deal with the data locally. You subscribe to it, and then the data synchronizes in the background, going to the network if it needs to, and you don't need to deal with it. So you don't call remote APIs like fetch or post anymore. That's the main difference. We want to be more decentralized and resilient than existing solutions, and we want to have zero single point of failure. So we got rid of domain names, and our protocol only works with IP. It just needs the server to have an IP, not a domain name. So does that mean that we are peer-to-peer? Not exactly. Not at the network level, because if you are totally peer-to-peer at the network level, then it doesn't really work. Imagine you want to sync your data and you need the device of your friends or co-workers to be online at the exact same moment. That doesn't work. So basically what we do is that we do have servers, but we call it a two-tier topology, and the servers, we call them brokers, and they only do one thing, which is to store and forward encrypted blocks of data. You can run anywhere they can run anywhere, these brokers, as long as they have a public IP, and we would like them to run everywhere, especially at home and in your office. So that's about decentralization, right? That's what we call at the edge of the network, or even, in your device. So that's the level of decentralization and data locality that we want. Like with a pod provider, you can decide where your data is stored, and you can also configure automatic backups that are encrypted. And so it allows perfect privacy. The server doesn't see your data. Because we developed this new protocol that doesn't need domain names, we automatically came to use DIDs, as you saw before in the previous presentation. So DIDs is just a scheme, DID. And every document, every user has a DID in Nextgraph. They are stable and they remain, they are durable. They remain the same even if you move your data from one broker to another or from a device to another. It's the same ID. These URIs are also used to encode the permissions that you have for a document. So if you have this long URI which contains a cryptographic key, it means you can access the document, you can read, maybe you can subscribe to it, and you can maybe even write in that document. But if you don't have that link, you can't do anything. That's how we deal with permissions. So, of course, we thought about backward compatibility with HTTP, which means that you can always run a web service in Node.js, by example, to serve your data. And we have an SDK in Node, as I said, and a web app also. Thanks to our collaboration with ActivityPods, we'll have compatibility with ActivityPod, but also full compatibility with Solid at the storage level. It means that the data that you have in Nextgraph will be available as a pod for Solid applications. RDF and Sparkle are at the heart of our framework, as you understood, and they are accessible locally in JavaScript from within your app. You have Sparkle inside the app. So that's additional features that we bring that we didn't see so far so much in the Solid world, which is to be able to time travel, to go back to previous revisions of your graph, of your data, and also to audit. To audit with signatures, you can audit the trail of changes and see who did what, and if there are some things that are not authorized, for example. So we believe this framework is good for data-centric applications, collaborative applications, or social applications, anything you want. Now let's dive a bit more into our SDK with LDO. Thanks to our collaboration with LDO, which is now compatible with Nextgraph, as you just heard. You just need to define some checks shapes, and that generates some TypeScript definitions, so you can manipulate objects directly in your app. You never have to touch RDF nor Sparkle. For now, LDO supports React and Svelte, so you can directly bind your data to your reactive GUI components. When the data changes anywhere in the network, it automatically updates in your GUIs. So creating an app, it's simple. You just create a Vite app, add the LDO and Nextgraph dependencies, define your shape, code your React components, and also you get authentication with Nextgraph for free. There is a package for that. As you have seen, it was LDO, React Solid, and we have a Nextgraph Solid with, React Next Graph, sorry, that makes the same, that makes the authentication for you. You can test it in nextgraph.eu. You create a wallet, and then you go to localfirstapp.eu, where you have a demo app that does very few things. It's just to manage contacts. It's like a contact address book, very simple. It's just a demo. And it looks like that. So this is the shape that says we have two properties, the vCard full name and the vCard has email. And then we have it in the React, bound to the React component. Here you can see I'm displaying the name and displaying the email address. We have another feature that we just developed recently, which about social queries. It's very new. We thought it was needed because we want it to be for social applications. And so far, the platforms are centralized, right? Meta and all the TikTok and all the platforms are centralized. That's very good for them, for the programmers that make apps based on that, because they have a view of all the data of all the users, and they can query it as much as they want. They have a global view. But when it's decentralized, and especially when it's like the Fediverse or Solid, or when it's end-to-end encrypted like with NextGraph, then you never have the full picture of the data, of the global data. All the logic of your application should be in the client, at least for us, and you can't query globally. So that's how it works, right? You have the brokers here that only deal with encrypted data in red, and then the devices can only deal with. They have access to the data, of course, in green here in the diagram, but it's partial data, right? It's only the data you have access to, and that you have fetched locally, that you have synced locally. So this is what I just said, and locally you cannot run global queries. That's the main problem. So in order to circumvent this problem, we created this inbox, which is hosted on the broker, but it's end-to-end encrypted. So the brokers again cannot see anything, and it's a way to pass messages between devices and users. So it's encrypted before it's sent, and then if you are the owner of the inbox, you can go and fetch the messages and decrypt them locally in the device. We use that for several features, including for social queries. And so how does it work, the social query? So I want to ask something in the network, like by example, searching for skills for programmer skills. That's the demo that we did. I'm searching for a developer. I want to see who is good at RDF, Sparkle, and Solid, let's say. So I'm going to ask to all my contacts. That's the first circle, the blue one. And then those will ask to their contacts in red. And then they will those will do the same to the yellow circle, and so forth and so on. Then the results come back. They come back to me, but they come back through the others, right? Through the social network. Here in orange, I've put one that is in the social network, but that has been asked twice about the same thing. And because he keeps a memory about it, he's not going to answer twice. This is to avoid to have double the data, or to avoid loops also. So what do we get with this? We get a web of trust, and we can check the integrity of the data, because at every level, we know the immediate peer, the contacts that we have, we know them, we trust them. The ones we don't trust are the ones that are far away in the graph, right? But because there is a chain of trust, if I trust my friends and the friends of the friends, the trust is established by transitivity. Then we can go as far as we want in the network, or we can put a limit. We can say after 5 or 10 far in the network, I want to stop or not. And the queries can take a long time to get results. All the results will take as much time as it needs, right? Maybe a day or two. You will get immediate results for the close ones, but it can take more time for the far network. So it enforces privacy, because at every hop, we anonymize the results. Like the red ones, when you give it back the results to the blue one, he removes where it comes from, the results. So that when I'm green, I don't see who are the red ones or the yellow ones. I only know who are the blue ones, but not the others. I don't know who they are, the ones who answer to the query. It's asynchronous. It means it works even if I don't have internet and I get back to internet, I will answer to the queries later. and I get my results as they arrive. And it's not always the same peer that answers the queries. It can be like me. I can have several devices. I can start the queries with my phone, and then my phone is out of battery, and then my laptop is going to be online, and it will continue this query itself. So that's the example that we did, the demo app that is to search for programming skills in the social network. And you can test it. It's the same app, and this is the URL for the code if you are eager to see it. So we are still in alpha preview mode, all of it, the SDK, the protocol. It's still early, so please bear with us until we reach the beta version, probably this year. And also the documentation is lacking so far, but we will work on it this summer. We are looking for devs also in Rust and in Svelte, Tailwind, and people who like RDF and Sparkle. They are always welcome. And that's it. Thank you very much. And thanks to ODI and the SolidWorks for having us today. And subscribe to our newsletter and Mastodon if you want to get updates.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nico, for an excellent presentation. It was really great to hear from both presenters today. And if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. We've got time to ask them. I'm going to lead, and I've got the same question for both Jackson and Nico, which is, what is the most exciting application that either you've developed or you've seen developed on top of LDO and NextGraph, respectively? I'm going to throw over to Jackson first.
Very good. So there was one thing that I was pretty happy to hear of is that there was a project in Capgemini, which is a global consulting group that worked with LDO. So that just felt great because this is a project that went live. I think that it was for a government. It was like a welfare office. I think it was the Welfare Office of Norway that was using LDO for reading linked data. It just felt really great to have it be used for a project that is for such an important client. But there are that's not to diminish other projects that aren't necessarily for, like, say, the Norwegian government. But it is, yeah, it was great to see that.
Awesome. And what about Nico? What are you seeing developed on top of NextGraph that excites you? Feel free to advertise as many projects as you like.
Well, I don't have any app working on NextGraph yet. I have many ideas and many ambitions, but what I know that exists so far, and it's not on NextGraph, but it will be soon, is ActivityPods and apps that are available on ActivityPods, like mutual help apps, and Mastopod, which is like a social network similar to Mastodon, right? That we all know, but that works with linked data. And I think that's the convergence I want to see. Right? They're all based on linked data.
And what's your roadmap for applications that you want to develop on NextGraph then?
Well, the ambition is huge. It's to compete with all the big tech applications. So we'll start with the email. We want a very good webmail that will store your data in a graph that you can query, that you have access to the data, even if you want to change the front end later on. It will be stored in your pod. It will be stored in NextGraph. And then we have more like collaborative apps, like all the docs and spreadsheet, even good spreadsheets that are work offline and that are collaborative. We want, that's already a big package, right? But then social networks, of course. I'd like to have an Instagram that works on these technologies. We already have PixelFed. We just need to port it and make it, because PixelFed is an example of a very good app, but it's still stuck with the PostgreSQL database, you know? So it's not using this RDF and linked data that we all love, right? So that's what I want to see. I would like to reach out to this project to tell them, look, you can use linked data, and it's much better because then everybody can reuse the data, everybody can connect to it as they want. and query it as they want. They own the data.
Awesome. And I'm going to jump in now with a question from Elf Pavlik, which is, for reactivity, TC39 signals are getting traction. Have you looked at integrating that with various frameworks using the signal proposal? I think that was a question for Nico, but please correct me if I'm wrong, Elf Pavlik.
I think also Jackson is very aware of it and is working in the same thing, right? It's they're all going to be based on signals now. React is based on signals, Svelte is based on signals, and it's now there is a specification. So maybe we should just implement that, and maybe Jackson wants to say something about it.
Yeah, as it comes out more, there can be updates for LDO that work with this. I need to look into it a little bit more. As I understood it, this is a specification that is being integrated into, like, for example, into React, and then LDO being built on top of this stuff will be able to leverage that. But I do need to look into it a little bit more.
Got it. So we've got a question here from Oshani. For those who don't know Oshani, one of Tim Berners-Lee's PhD students and has done a lot of the early work on Solid. I'll throw this to Jackson first, which is, in any of the work that you're doing, have you seen federated learning on local data done with Solid?
I have not seen federated learning with local data on Solid. I'm sure that there is, and that's partially because I've been working in the open source ecosystem, and it's kind of out of the hype cycle of machine learning. Though it sounds like a very interesting field to do. I saw that INREP recently posted something about this on LinkedIn. So perhaps they're doing.
Go and
they're
take a look on
finding
LinkedIn
customers.
is the answer. Awesome. We've got a question from Lorenzo Carter. This one's for Nico. How does your implementation handle permissions in regard to querying an entire social network?
Yes, good question, right? It's not easy. But basically, if you have the permission, you received it already. We store it. It's these links that I mentioned before, right, with the key. And then you always querying locally, right? Only query the data that you have locally. So if you are a trusted app, you have access to all the data of the user. If you are a third-party app, you ask for permissions with Sai, which is developed by Elf Pavlik. Soon we will have it. This interop with Sai. We're going to use this format for granting permissions. Now, in the social network, if that was exactly the question, in the social, when I displayed today this feature of the social queries, you need to, when you receive a query, we need to ask permission to the user. But the permission is of this kind. It's like, do you grant this other user that you have in your contact to query your data? Which kind of data do you want to allow? And every time there is a new query, it can be a bit different, the scope, right, of the data grant. But if you already gave full access to some of your data to your friends, it's okay, it works. Otherwise, you need to grant again. So there is an interaction that happens, yes, with the user. We don't want them to query all our data while we are asleep and find all our secrets, right?
Wonderful. Yes, no. And I had a related question around the network of trust, which is, are you looking at leveraging existing trust anchors? So in European eIDAS, for instance, you've got regulation asserting who are trusted entities for issuing government documents. The DVS in the UK is doing something similar. There's various efforts to create grassroots way of establishing trust based on including people you know, or bootstrapping government lists like national insurance numbers. Are you using any of those trust anchors within NextGraph at the moment, or are you looking to do so?
Not at the moment, no. I'd like to. eIDAS, especially because it's a European specification. And there are many. There is the data spaces that have their own spec. But basically, or you do access control, or you do, it's another level of control on the data permissions. What you're mentioning, I think it's more like contracts. And if I understood well,
Yes, it's
yes,
the governance of who you trust.
yes, I don't do that. I don't do,
I'll go
it
over
could be
this.
added, but I don't do it yet.
I'll go over to Damon's question then, which is how efficient and scalable is Nextgraph, especially for social networking for large-scale servers, thinking of ones of size Mastodon.social.
So Mastodon.social, it's the biggest instance of ActivityPub. It has hundreds of thousands of users, I think. And it's a centralized server in itself. Like I don't know how they handle the load, but in Nextgraph, it's totally different architecture. You don't have this central point of failure, I would call them. So it's always in your device. So you answer to queries that are coming from your contacts. How much contacts do you have? It depends on you. If you are very famous, maybe it will crash. Maybe you have to carry a supercomputer with you everywhere you go, because you'll. But it's not meant for that. It's not meant for superstars and influencers. It's meant for normal users that have like 500 maximum contacts or something like that. That's the scale. Now, if you want to use it not for social networks, but for more like a robust graph database, that you can do, because we have the Node.js bindings, and then you can run it on a VPS and things like that. But that's a different use case.
Wonderful. Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat, and I see it's coming up.
There's one more in the Q&A.
Oh, there is one more in the queue. I don't see it. Do you want to shout it out, Jackson?
The Q&A, the Q&A
Thank
feature,
you.
yes.
This comes from Javier Perida. I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. What are the core challenges of the development of these technologies within indigenous groups with reduced social infrastructure and diverse governance structures? Jackson, since you called out, I'm going to hand this one over to you.
Sounds good. I guess the core challenges is we'd love to hear about the challenges and the governance structure in these indigenous groups, and see what can be done to help out there. And reaching out to someone like me or the various other groups, the solid practitioners, that's the best way to get your voice heard, so that maybe something cool could happen and could create something cool out of that.
So I will
Jeff
also
is putting up his hand.
I'll also say that in Australia, the Australian National University, which I used to work with, has a Software Innovation Institute. They are deploying Solid for different indigenous communities. So there is work around this happening. Those communities have very different governance structures at a cultural level. And I don't have the set of challenges or answers as to what needs to be changed around Solid for those communities. But if you're interested in talking to groups like that Software Innovation Institute, we can definitely put you in contact and make that happen. And the community channels for conversation, like the practitioners channels, are also great places to have these conversations. So if you haven't already, go to solidproject.org, go to the community page and follow those links to go on the Matrix channel and go on the forum so that you can have these conversations. And we do have a final question for Damon that we're going to finish off with, which is for Jackson. What is the status of Liquid Chat?
Wait, actually, but before I guess the brief answer for Liquid Chat is Liquid Chat currently is not being maintained. That is a pre-LDO chat, and there's a lot of spaghetti code in there because of that. LDO was developed based on the spaghetti that I developed for Liquid Chat. Eventually, there will be a new chat. If you are interested in building a chat yourself, I have actually published under the Solid Data Modules Foundation a version of a chat library that you can integrate into your own chats that uses LDO and makes it easy to work with chat. So if you want to build one, you can do that. Eventually, I hope to build another version of chat. But also, I think that Jeff and Elf Pavlik have something they'd like to say.
Ah, I did not see that. Jeff,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
just want to mention that the whole issue of how we deal with indigenous communities and various communities that have different structures is definitely a major topic of the practitioners. So definitely encourage you to come to that and ask questions and share with others there. We've it's very much part of our ongoing discussion is how does a group of developers working with the community relate to that community and make sure that they're hearing the community's needs. So please do show up at the practitioners and discuss that with us. We're very interested in that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeff. And yes, do go and get engaged in all the different groups. Elf Pavlik, do you want to bring us home?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on this question. I understand it's about communities that have limited or no broadband access. And myself, I've been connected with different wireless mesh communities. And also where I currently live, for many years, we had like very limited broadband access. Now we have fiber optic and satellite backup. Well, that's amazing for the last few years. But also like it's a small wireless network with 20, 30 neighbors, an orphanage, and actually local first technologies I think can be very amazing for those kind of environments because you are not relying on your broadband connection. If you need to coordinate something in your local community, you can use local infrastructure, local wireless networks, and I think exploring this direction can be very fitting in those let's say spaces where broadband access is limited.
Awesome. Thanks, Elf Pavlik. I do see that other questions are rolling in. It is 1:15, and I don't want to keep everyone. So instead, what I would encourage is anyone who wants to continue the conversation, either go to the main Solid Matrix channel, which I've linked in the chat to continue the conversation. There is also an ODI Solid specific channel that I will link to as well that you can join to have conversations around ODI Solid specific topics. Thank you all for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of day, rest of morning, rest of afternoon, rest of evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us and see you next time. Thank you.